Hi, I guess I'm back. So that's where all this came from. And all I wanted to do was kind of get in on the AI kind of analysis of these two experts, because in my opinion, though everyone thinks I'm biased, which is fine, they both had phenomenal testimony, and they both withstood the scrutiny of the opposing cross-examination, in my opinion. So we're talking about the Karen Reed trial. We're talking about, first, the testimony of Judson Welcher. Then we're going to talk about the testimony of Dr. Wolfe. But what I did was, and I'll show you my process here, and we'll just go right through it. What I did was, as a surprise, I just popped on here live, and I want to show you what this analysis told me. So I asked ChatGPT the other day to summarize ARCCA's findings from the first Karen Reed trial based on their sworn testimony. I included the words sworn testimony because I don't want any like Reddit opinions. I don't want any biased, bloggers or anything anything like that. I just kind of wanted the truth. So I went off of what testimony was given in the first trial specifically for ARCCA. Okay. And this is what it gave me. It says that ARCCA's engineers said on the stand that O'Keefe's injuries were head and body trauma and not consistent with being struck by an SUV reversing at 24 miles an hour. A real 24-mile-an-hour pedestrian impact would usually leave skull, leg, or spinal fractures and widespread bruising, and only superficial abrasions were present. And it mattered because it undercut the Commonwealth's theory that Karen Reed backed this large SUV up and backed into John O'Keefe, and it caused his death. So it kind of undercut that. So the next thing ChatGPT said about the taillight breakage. Now, remember, this is ARCCA from the first trial that it's evaluating, and it said the damage to the Lexus's rear tail lamp was inconsistent with a human head or an arm. That was pretty significant because it suggests that the lens could have been broken independently before the event took place. It's quite possible that happened. As far as crash data and vehicle physics were concerned, there was no event that was stored in the SUV's black box, and airbags never deployed, and that was significant to them at the time. And they're pretty much saying that there was no meaningful impact if the airbags didn't go off, then there must not have been an impact. Which became tricky because later on they said, no, she broke her taillight when she was backing out of the garage and hit the GMC or hit the Chevy Traverse at a low speed and blah, blah. But no airbags deployed then either. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but that's kind of what Dr. Welker's saying. Like these low impact crashes, they can send somebody spinning, but they're not necessarily going to trigger all of the airbags and everything else. So the next thing that ChatGPT says is ARCCA said that the biomechanics of the alleged strike for O'Keefe's, for his skull to meet the tail lamp without other serious injuries, he would have to stand in an almost impossible posture. Remember, this is from the first trial. And it really highlighted the mechanical improbabilities in the prosecution scenario. And then their overall causation opinion, this is ARCCA in the first trial, they couldn't pinpoint how he was fatally injured, but they testified that the evidence isn't enough to blame the Lexus. So it never excluded the Lexus. It never excluded Karen Reed, who was driving the Lexus. The only thing that ARCCA ever said in the first trial was, we don't have enough to say that it was the Lexus, which, John and I talked about on the last show. It's that affirmative defense or affirmative offense, I guess, in this situation. So These are some additional details they brought up in the first trial. There was missing or limited evidence because Dr. Wolfe noted that items like O'Keefe's shoe and his hat, they were never factored into the state police's investigation. Remember Trooper Paul's reconstruction, which was what they used to reconstruct the reconstruction, basically. But they said that their absence didn't change the conclusions, even though they would have been in what we now know as a debris field. Like in these in these trials, people start talking all this jargon. I've noticed a lot of it in the comments. Like people are saying things. Even Karen Reed is like, case in chief. Like like she's been through. I'm a lawyer now, and people are talking about debris fields. Like I think I went to high school with Debris Fields. He was a wide receiver on our team. So there's all these new things that are coming out. People are using terms like "open the door." That opens the door. That opens the door. That's definitely a legal term. It's been around forever and ever and ever. But so at any rate, they said they were missing, or there was limited evidence. They had questions about the DNA or the trace evidence because Wolfe wasn't sure, or he wasn't aware of hair or DNA matches that were later reported on the vehicle, and it underscored the narrow technical scope of his work. So had he known about it, his conclusions may have changed, but we got a second shot because there was a second trial. And there was a whole compensation flack because as much as everybody is making a big deal now over ARCCA's invoice, which only $40,000 of which was paid, it doesn't matter. Like they're being paid $400,000, yes, but look at any trial. That's what a good quality expert witness is going to cost. I don't know what the Commonwealth normally gives for engineering firms like that. I can guarantee you that defense firms are using they're using ARCCA, they're using Aperture LLC, and they're probably paying them $500,000 in some cases. Like that doctor, the brain surgeon that showed up and testified that one day, he's very nice, wonderful, humble man, obviously very smart, and he testified about the head injuries and all that. And there's no doubt that, some of the estimates were that he was paid $10,000 to $20,000 to fly from Miami to Canton, or it's not Dighton. I can't think of the name of where the Norfolk County courthouse is, but he was paid a very handsome sum to just get up there and testify one day and fly back home. It's very common in courts. It's an issue only because it's being brought up, and a lot of these things are being brought up because defense attorneys tend to want you to look at things like that because it definitely deflects you away from looking at facts. Now, whether the facts are good or bad, and sometimes they're not in favor of the Commonwealth, and I'll give you full disclosure, I don't know that they have met the burden of beyond a reasonable doubt yet. But I'll bet you dollars to donuts, plenty of people said that in the first trial. And it ended up in a hung jury because the jurors are not hearing and seeing all the noise and all the interference. They're hearing all the noise and seeing all the interference of what's going on in the courtroom at the time. But that's about it. They're not, and thank you. Somebody told me it was in Dedham, Massachusetts. So they're not hearing all of the stuff we're hearing. So they're not subjected to it. I don't know. I hear that it's a young jury, a predominantly young jury, like in their 30s. A majority of them are in their 30s. So are they using ChatGPT or Google and just kind of not talking about it when they come back in? I've heard from reports of people in the courtroom that this jury is very attentive. They're note takers, which is great. That's who you want on your jury, whether you're the Commonwealth or the defense. You want people that are paying attention and invested in this process. We don't want to send an innocent woman to prison. We want to send a guilty woman to prison, or if she's not guilty, she goes free. So that's the role of the jury, and that's where they're at. So ARCCA's testimony did not tell the jury who killed John O'Keefe. It simply dismantled the prosecution's car strike narrative by showing, one, that the injuries don't fit a typical SUV pedestrian collision, and two, that the vehicle damage doesn't match hitting a person. Now, I can tell you, I was very impressed with Dr. Wolfe's, and remember, I'm still talking about the first trial, but as in general, I can tell you, I'm pretty impressed with Dr. Wolfe. I think he's highly intelligent. I think that, you know, like the dude can do math, which is impressive to me. But he's definitely way more personable than is Judson Welcher, and that matters. That matters in trials like this. I think by reading the tea leaves of what everybody's saying online, they immediately dismissed Judson Welcher. People are making fun of the blue paint in the comments here, but it's because, and of course, those are the same people that were making fun of the fact that Judson Welcher wore a hat and jeans and a shirt like John O'Keefe, because they were kind of taught that, oh yeah, that's, you know, like that's not ethical and all this other stuff. But as it turns out, ARCCA did the exact same thing with their crash test dummy. What was it? Crash Matthew or whatever it was called. They even put the same Nike sneakers on him with the black and the white sole. Okay. Everyone stopped talking about that at that point. It's just like, I get sick of the high school homecoming attitude. I've used that term a million times in the comments. And by the way, all comments and all opinions are welcome in our world. They are subject to scrutiny. And sometimes I'm not as kind as I should be. I admit it. It's a fault. I'm not doing it to make you angry. I'm doing it because I come from a place of experience. And when you attack my credibility, you're going to get a crack in the, you're going to get cracked back on. I promise you. So at any rate, this is what they found out in the first trial. So what I did was the other day, I said, hey, ChatGPT, I asked it to summarize the exact prompt was summarize Judson Welcher's findings from the Karen Reed trial based on his testimony. And I'm not going to go through this right now because I've got it in an update. I can go through it right now. Who cares? So as far as the time and vehicle motion is concerned, what Welcher is, he demonstrated and concluded that the cell phone pings in the vehicle EDR, which is sometimes referred to as the black box, and those driveway laser scans all line up with Reed's Lexus reversing at or around 23.9 miles per hour for 54 plus feet at 12:32 a.m., which is the exact same moment that John O'Keefe's phone stopped working. So if you'll remember, like, it's not an Apple Watch thing or Apple Health or whatever. It's a movement on your watch. I mean, on your phone. You have a gyrometer. You have a compass in your phone. Apple's watching every move you make, whether you opt in or you opt out. I don't know if you know that or not. I don't know if you care. And so, at any rate, that's what he determined. When you can match up the time, fully realizing that this timeline changed because there was additional data that was reviewed, but every little thing that the Commonwealth does is a conspiracy. We all know that. So he was able to pinpoint the exact time when John's phone stopped moving. And, you know, our background, John and my background, from being in a 911 center, we know that Apple has come significantly farther than some of the other companies when it comes to tracking your location. The limitations it still has, and I know this from a personal level too. I used to live in a high-rise condo. Elevation. So Apple is amazing at telling you that you're at, 112 degrees north and 16 degrees west, 14 minutes and all this other stuff. They can pinpoint you to within whatever that guy testified to. What they can't really do well is tell your elevation yet. I'm sure that there's going to be a way that they figure out how to do that, probably with satellites and everything else. So he made a 3D model of Fairview Road, the drive path. He synchronized the phone and the EDR charts. And this matters because it places Reed's SUV and the victim in the same spot at the same time. And this is what the Commonwealth is saying, this is where they're saying that the collision happened. A lot of people are blaming Hank Brennan for bringing these charges because they don't like him and they don't like his brash personality. And they use this fact that he represented Whitey Bulger, like somehow he's still crooked, so now he works at the Commonwealth or whatever. He's the prosecutor. I don't know what he was appointed to be the special prosecutor, and he's speaking on behalf of the Commonwealth. Take that for what it is. I mean, you could turn that into a conspiracy. I'm sure the defense wants you to believe that it's a conspiracy, but you hate him because he's doing such a good job, or you want to pick apart everything he's doing because you don't want him to have any kind of advantage. You just dislike the guy. It's fine. That's kind of his job too. Like the defense's job is to hey, look over here, don't look over here. And the prosecution's job is just to keep you focused on the evidence. But what I wanted to say about that was it was a grand jury that came through with these charges. I got somebody attacked me in the comments for being rude to them because I said that she said that nobody said she's being tried for DUI. Okay, whatever. I listed the charges for her and I said, this is what you're calling me rude over. Like it's the truth. Like I'm sorry the truth hurts your feelings, but this is the truth. This is what she's being charged with. I don't agree with all of that. But again, this is the grand jury speaking also. The grand jury's indictment came back with this charge, then they added or they upgraded the murder charge. So the Commonwealth is trying it. That's the way it goes. The people have spoken in the grand jury, and now they brought it inside the courtroom. There was sufficient evidence to a grand jury, not to just a bunch of people crowded in Michael Morrissey's office. They brought it in front of a grand jury. And that happens with police officers all the time. They bring it in front of, look at the case of Salvatore Aldradi in New Jersey. A year and a half, 18 months after he was completely cleared for his in the line of duty shooting where somebody pointed a gun at him. It was later determined the guy was suicidal and high on methamphetamine. He was completely cleared. A new attorney general comes in New Jersey, puts it in front of the grand jury the way they want it pushed, and lo and behold, Salvatore Aldradi is still awaiting murder charges, manslaughter charges, I think. So for those of you who tell me all the time, you don't think it can happen? I know it happens. It happens to police officers all the time. I'm very aware that it happens. I think, anyway. So as far as the injury pattern versus Lexus geometry was concerned, this is what Dr. Welcher said. His right forearm, John O'Keefe, God rest his soul, his right forearm abrasions and small facial cut are consistent with a clip or a side swipe by the right rear corner of a 2021 Lexus RX 350, followed by a fall onto frozen ground. That's what he is claiming. He said he showed as evidenced by side-by-side photos of wounds and the Lexus edges, the force vector diagrams, the biomechanical comparisons to similar crashes with no long bone fractures, and the famed Blue Man Group paint test. So that really does kind of counter the defense's claim that his injuries couldn't come from a low-speed vehicle strike. Remember, that's their assertion. There's no way this came from a low-speed vehicle strike. Dr. Welcher's mission, if you will, though some people just say he was paid to do it, but he proved through science that it's possible. Now, the first thing any of you should say, but the burden is beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof in the case is beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not the burden of proof in each individual element that leads to the burden of proof. So, trials use circumstantial evidence all the time. And when taken in totality, it leads to the burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. The data is the data, as Karen Reed would say. Show me a car backing into a dummy at 23 miles an hour and tell me that it would cause that kind of damage. The paint transfer test. It was he used a matching Lexus, which he purchased and will sell, and all of the proceeds are knocked off the bill to the Commonwealth. So if they lost any money in depreciation of the vehicle, the Commonwealth's going to eat that. Say it loses $5,000 in depreciation, although it's the mock-up of Karen Reed's Lexus. That's not going for market value. I have news for you. That's not going for Blue Book. So if it goes beyond Blue Book, they'll reduce the bill to the Commonwealth by that amount. They're not going to turn a profit on that. They'll turn a profit, but they'll essentially reduce the bill. He even swore on the stand that's what he was going to do. Take it for what it's worth. But the court played video and stills of the 3 live tests, and they showed measurement overlays, and it visually fit, and it was meant to help jurors picture how this contact could occur without high speed or with obvious fractures. It could occur. You had a doctor last week who said that, no, I've been an ER doctor forever and ever, and they don't look like that. But she never said there's no way that could happen, because she can't say that. This guy, with engineering certainty, with a high degree of engineering certainty, which is a thing, believe it or not, in courts, said, yeah, it can definitely happen. He made the mistake, a very bad mistake, of asserting that that's how it happened, and you're not allowed to do that. And to be frank, I thought that there was going to be a mistrial after that, but there wasn't. There will definitely be grounds for an appeal based on that, in my opinion, and maybe a couple other things. So his taillight damage analysis was laser recon of the 5 a.m. Garage bump. So they reconstructed an accident within a reconstruction. They did overlays, 3D laser scans. Hopefully you remember that. And when she backed out of the garage, she displaced some snow, but they did, with 3D overlays, measure the height of the bumper, measure the height of the damage where it would have occurred on the traverse. And they know these exact measurements. So what they were saying there was that taillight was already broken. Now, to what degree? Different story. But the taillight was already broken. In other words, that backing up did not cause the taillight to break. It was broken prior to that, meaning it could have been, it definitely was possible that it was broken because she backed into John O'Keefe. Still, proof beyond a reasonable doubt kind of swings both ways in this one, because there's no way you can say that taillight wasn't broken. There's no way you could say that it definitively was broken by John O'Keefe, but that's where the jury comes in. They have to weigh the evidence. So we had an overall opinion on this one. Judge Canoni barred him from saying the crash happened, which is a big no-no. She did allow him to say, to testify that all the measured data are consistent with Reed's Lexus, because he had the mock-up of Reed's Lexus. Contacting O'Keefe could cause fatal injuries, somebody of his stature, him specifically. And this direct exam Q&A was read right to the jury. I think it's going to give the prosecutors a science-based narrative without violating the evidentiary line that the judge set. This is what AI is telling you. It's not me. It's not my opinion. I just asked it to be unbiased and go off of his testimony. I know that there are cheerleaders for both sides. I think this is horrible how this has turned out, because this poor guy's dead and we've all clouded the issue. The issue is the guy's death, and the mom and the niece and nephew who lost a mom, a father, and now their new father, so to speak. And their like kind of new mother, because she was fastly becoming a part of their lives. So other nuggets that the jury heard: Welcher used a 141 slide PowerPoint in a full-scale driveway model. It was built from 1.8 million laser points. His firm, Aperture LLC, spent $325,000 on the case, which included buying the Lexus, by the way. And they billed that to the DA's office. And a colleague's late-filled time correction report shifted his reverse path timeline by 21 to 29 seconds, but testified that the change didn't alter his core conclusions. It did alter the timeline, though. So the core conclusions were, yeah, you could still be hit by an SUV at a low speed and die. The guy's an engineer. So what I was always thinking, like, they're just going to send ARCCA in there to prove him wrong, which, I don't know. I mean, that's a defense strategy, obviously, but, like, do you want to prove him wrong, or do you want to, like, prove an alternate theory? I think they had to pick a horse and they rode it. But Welcher never said that Karen Reed definitively hit John O'Keefe. The court wouldn't let him. He walked jurors through speed data, paint transfer demos, wound matching, and stress analyses that all point in the same direction, which is a low-speed clip from Reed's Lexus, and said that it's scientifically plausible, while alternative explanations for the injuries and the taillight damage are less so. So he's saying the most logical theory that he came up with is this could happen. He's not saying that it did happen. He's not saying definitively, like, she did it. Whether that's enough to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt is now up to the panel, but the prosecution closed its case on the strength of this reconstruction. So I took it a step further, and I said, hey, this is where I might have to jump ahead a little bit, but I said, using the highest level of biomechanical engineering and accident reconstruction methods, compare the findings of ARCCA and of Judson Welcher and determine if they were trying to evaluate the same things, because I think that this is important, and which had the stronger conclusions. And I told it to output it in a comprehensive summary. I'm not going to read, well, I will. I'll read you the end result, because this was ARCCA before Dr. Wolfe's testimony. I added in Dr. Wolfe's testimony, and you might be pleasantly surprised. Stick around. Also stick around while I wet my whistle. Also stick around. That's a Guinness 0, by the way. I've been sober for 17 years. I'm going to feed, or maybe I already have fed, all of this data that I derived from both ChatGPT and from Gemini, which is a large language model that Google owns that really knows deep research. And I asked AI, Given all this, what do you think happened? And we'll see what it says. So the bottom line on this, I'll go into detail when with the updated stuff from Wolfe. The bottom line, it said, were they evaluating the same team? Mostly yes, but under different hypotheses. The speed regime. In 2024, prosecutors pitched a 24-mile-per-hour speed reverse battering ram, and ARCCA demolished that. The 2025 team pivoted to a low-speed corner brush, and Welcher tailored his work to that narrower impact. So they demolished, they kind of wiped the slate clean and said, okay, let's not stick with this 25-mile-an-hour in reverse thing. Could he have been clipped to cause him to hit the ground and die? The scope of evidence. ARCCA stuck to what they were handed, which were damage photos and an autopsy, and I believe Trooper Paul's reconstruction, his investigation. Welcher built a scene-wide reconstruction tying in telemetry, phone data, and that's something that ARCCA never attempted. Now, here's my guess on this, and it's going to sound controversial. I don't care. ARCCA probably never attempted that because ARCCA wasn't being paid. If you remember, they were summoned by the Department of Justice because of an ongoing corruption allegation that this was all just a corruption scheme to frame Karen Reed, that she should have zero responsibility in all this. So the DOJ came in, they did a thorough investigation. This spawned the Farwell investigation on Sandra Birchmore. God rest her soul. That guy hopefully will face the death penalty. That former officer, that monster. But the DOJ also hired an expert witness known as ARCCA. They're an accident reconstruction crew, an engineering firm, just as prominent. The NHL uses them, as we learned the other day, to talk about, biomechanics and crashes into the boards and stuff like that. So they're just as credible, and they wiped that theory off the map that she backed into him doing 24 miles an hour. But there was this new theory posited that he was clipped by the edge of it. Like, I don't know, was the back of his head clipped? That's where he got the head damage, or I don't know. So at any rate, the outcome of their test, ARCCA asked, does the evidence prove the car hit him? And Welcher was asking, can the evidence be synthesized into a car hit scenario? Those are different research questions, and they're going to yield different answers. So it's whichever one the jury picks to be more likable. That's probably what this is going to come down to. I don't want to foreshadow it too much, because there were weights given here, there were scores given here, especially when it came to what happened to John. But the bottom line here was that what they said was, I asked it, I asked it for a score, and I don't see it in here, but we'll see it in a second. But at any rate, here's how they measured up. The factor, like whose conclusion is stronger from an engineering and biomechanical standpoint. That's what I asked it for. The factor, the breadth and fidelity of raw data, like the laser scan, the telemetry, and the synchronized timeliness, point for Welcher. That's what they said. Because he had a richer data set, a far richer data set is how it describes it. The mechanical replication of alleged contact, that was a split between Welcher, who recreated geometry, but at 2 miles an hour, not his own 23-mile-an-hour speed limit. Remember, he said he wasn't going to stand in the rear of a Lexus going 23 miles an hour. But ARCCA never hit a surrogate with a car at all in the first trial. So neither achieved a full-scale match. They just split them down the road. When it came to internal consistency, though, ChatGPT gives it to ARCCA. They said that their tests line up with the 24-mile-an-hour promise, that it didn't happen that way. Welcher's 2-mile-an-hour paint demo versus his 23-mile-an-hour text stream reading invites criticism, and he was criticized for that. He was criticized not only in the cross-examination of Alan Jackson, he was, Alessi, but it's probably going to get a lot worse come Monday. Like, there's probably going to be some more fireworks on Monday, I would guess. So the net take was, and then the openness about the limits. Oh, wait a minute. This is important. When it came to statistical, epidemiological precedent for like injury for databases and stuff like that, and long bone fracture rates, point to ARCCA. They said that ARCCA cites classic pedestrian impact literature. Welcher relied more on bespoke tests and visual overlays, meaning there is a degree of confirmation bias in that if you're just pulling studies that kind of support your theory. It's not nefarious. It's what you're doing. Like you saw that circle of the scientific method, blah, blah, blah. So then the openness about limits, ARCCA explicitly said that there was an unknown cause. So ARCCA never said anything about it wasn't a car crash, because they can't say that. The medical examiner, somebody else in the comments attacked me over this. The medical examiner never said that it was not a car accident. What the medical examiner that did the autopsy said was that he was killed by blunt force trauma to the back of the head and hypothermia. Those two were the causes of death. She was unable to determine the manner of death. Therefore, she did not call it a homicide, a manslaughter, or a suicide, or accidental death. She was unable to determine that. And it required further investigation, and that's what led to all of this. So the net take is, if you judge the strength by the amount of modern reconstruction tech deployed, Welcher wins that battle. He fused vehicle data, scene mapping, and live demonstrations into one coherent storyboard. But if you judge it by methodological rigor relative to the claimed speeds and conservative scientific language, ARCCA's caution may carry more weight. And they stayed inside the published injury thresholds. They didn't overstate their reach like Welcher did when he testified. And it probably resonated more with the jury in the first trial, because remember, we're talking about ARCCA from the first trial. Also, though, the first trial ended in a hung jury. They were confused, which to me is evidence, although it's probably harder with a second trial, but which to me is evidence that they're not hearing all of the rah-rah propaganda of cheerleader bullshit. They're jurors. They're taking this seriously like adults. They're not casting insults on one another or attacking each other's credibility. They're taking in all the evidence. And I'm willing to wager a lot of money that conspiracy is not on their mind. Conspiracy is the farthest thing on their mind. Like, all of the Karen Reed supporters are saying, like, oh, Judge Cannoni is in on it, and Hank Brennan this, and Brian Albert that, and that's not, I don't think that that's what they're thinking at all. I don't think that, I think that we all have the benefit of seeing that. And I'm telling you that if you watch our first episode we did in this series, we have 6 episodes. I'll put a playlist at the end of this thing. We have 6 episodes. My first episode, I was dead set on, man, this sure looks shady. This does not look good. These cops should have come out. They should have checked the house. I had all that stuff. As I've gone along, I've done the research. I found out what they did. I watched some testimony. I watched a lot of the first trial. I didn't watch all of the first trial. till now. I went back and I watched a little bit more. Then I watched some of the hearings in between. Then I watched a lot of this trial. I've been doing my best to keep up with this trial. I can't honestly say, because I've had appointments and stuff, that I've seen every minute of this trial. And I don't think that's healthy, by the way. But I definitely try to catch a recap every night. I prefer lawyer, he's not necessarily like people keep calling him like the most unbiased, blah, blah, blah. I just happen to like the guy. I don't think he's unbiased one bit. I think he's defense attorney through and through, and he thinks that this is a conspiracy, which is fine. That's his right. Like, he just lives up the road here. We could have a cup of coffee one day and discuss my police officer findings versus his defense attorney findings. He has a reason to think what he thinks, and he's an excellent attorney by all accounts from what I see. But I also have reason to think what I think too, that it is very easy for a defense attorney who doesn't have to swear to anything and who doesn't have to live by the rules of ethics. They claim they live by a rule of by ethical standards, but they violate them constantly. And there's no real punishment or real teeth if they violate them, if they go too far. So if they go far enough as to say, yeah, all these cops are crooked and it undermines the public safety for everybody in Canton, and a Canton cop can't go to the grocery store without being harassed by people of Canton because they think everything is crooked, when it wasn't, it's not substantiated. People just want to take the defense attorney's word that this is substantiated, but it's not. In fact, it's the opposite. The FBI came in and investigated. There's an independent, if you go to the commcenter.com/Karen Reed, you can look for yourself. You can see the independent audit of the Canton Police Department. It wasn't favorable in all places. I have the feeling they have offices in like Boston, Washington, D.C., but this was the Washington, D.C. crew that came down. And I have the feeling it's ex-feds. It's Secret Service agents. It's thank you, John. It's Secret Service agents, and it's you're more than welcome to jump in here, John. It's FBI agents. It's Five Stones who did that audit, and you can read the audit from top to bottom. It covers everything. It covers their investigative mistakes. It covers you should have brought the witnesses back to the, that audit was not about this case. It was about the police department. They included this case in there. They went that far. You go to our website, thecommcenter.com/Karen Reed. You can download the the PDFs all you want. Have at it. All right. So the net take, as I said, if you judge it by methodological rigor relative to the claim speeds and all of that, ARCCA's caution may carry more weight. All right. So what I said was, and this is kind of a finale, so let me just bear with me for a second. I want to skip ahead because I had. Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay, I told it. ChatGPT, I call it Orson. Do you know why? I said, I'm revisiting this. ARCCA's witness, Dr. Wolfe, presented testimony yesterday. Please update the ARCCA analysis with this new information, including any examination or cross-examination. So again, my target is sworn testimony, not what's on Reddit, not what NBC5 in Boston thinks. Nothing against NBC5 in Boston. I just wanted sworn testimony. I wanted to keep this as clean as possible because I want to know. It thought for 20 seconds, and it did update that for us. So this is the fresh AI take on what Dr. Wolfe's new testimony changes. As far as the crash test dummy series is concerned, The defense rolled out 3 live reverse impacts at 5, 15, and 24 miles an hour using a fully dressed hybrid 3. What was, somebody in the chat tell me, what was it? Is it crash test Matt or something? Matthew, or what was the name of that thing? So anyway, the impact on the jury for that set of tests, by the way, none of the reverse tests, by the way, reproduced the Lexus's taillight spider web fracture. There's a different test that produced broken taillights and all that. It talks about it. But what this is saying, the impact on the jury, is that it actually strengthens ARCCA's claim that lower speeds can't break the lens the way it failed. They're saying that it undercuts Welcher's low-speed brush story. So what they're saying is, and follow me on this, and understand I'm trying to work through this without bias, but what they're saying is, no. What you're saying is he was brushed by this car and it caused him to fall and hit his head. So in order to do that, he would have had to clip the taillight. He would have had to break the taillight with his arm. That's what you tried to prove with Dr. Welcher. We can prove through math and these other tests that it didn't happen that way. And to be frank, when we first started covering this, there were a lot of people that talked. There was a product tester from like a major motor manufacturer that was in our comments that was talking about like the tensile strength of a taillight. Like, that shit's not breaking with a human arm. It's just not going to happen. So maybe it's in a 1 in a million shot. Maybe it was broken previous to him getting out of the car. Maybe he threw the cocktail glass at the, and that's why she backed up. There are a lot of scenarios that could have taken place, but none are ruled out, is the point. And this is the building block of beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, whether the jury decides it's beyond a reasonable doubt is a different story. So, there were certification and credibility hits. The prosecutor spotlighted Wolfe's delayed ACTAR recertification. He highlighted the fact that they were paid $50,000 for the first trial, plus there was a bunch of deleted text chains. Now, this is a bit odd, because as much noise as people make about Brian Higgins destroying his SIM card, throwing out his cell phone, even though the preservation order was not in effect, and in fact he had called law enforcement to see if the preservation order was in effect, and they told him no. Bet you didn't know that. He still destroyed the phone. He still destroyed the SIM card. He did it on a military base, so what? He has access to it. Who cares? It should be more, it should stand out to you that he destroyed the phone and he destroyed the SIM card. I get why it does, but he has reasons for it. It's his business, whatever. But if you're trying to assert, or if you're trying to say he's the suspect here, the defense isn't saying that right now. They may have tried to paint that picture in the first trial, but they're not saying that in this trial. They haven't really covered that. So I think you're going to see a shift in people's opinions about that. Like, I get that there's a great microdots breakdown of the fight at the waterfall, like where, a very animated Brian Higgins is trying to, what everybody is saying, goad John O'Keefe into coming outside. Nobody knows what they're saying, though. So you can really kind of make that into whatever you want it to be. It really is kind of the path of least resistance in this case, because it does look like he wants to fight somebody. He was being rambunctious in there. drunk Irishman in the bar, no offense. I mean, that's why I'm 17 years sober, but, they're grab assing, and I got in trouble for saying that even, but, I don't know. That conspiracy part where he was jumped, they tried to get in the text messages. From what I understand, it just didn't resonate with the jury. The jury's not buying that. Like the jury's thinking the same thing we've been saying all along. Even though it could have been an accident, there isn't a cop, no cop's going to kill another cop over a woman. Like, not that women aren't like supreme beings. I get that. But I mean, like, you're not going to risk prison. Like, the days of launching 1,000 ships are kind of over. Like, you're not going to throw away your career over a dude. And yes, it's very feasible that it was a complete mistake. Like, he met him in the garage and punched him in the face and he knocked him to the ground. The fight theory, though, to me is a little loose, because you would have to be very specific in hitting just one part of the back of his head in this so-called violent fight. If you're going to fight in the sense, if you're going to verbally fight for your position that he didn't have any bruises on his body, he didn't have any body fractures and all this other stuff, and still say he was beat to tar, and still say that he was killed by a skull fracture. I know people say that, oh, he could have fallen down the stairs or the dog knocked him over and all this other stuff. I hear you. I think differently. I'm not going to apologize for that. It's based on instinct, and it's not like I can't be convinced, and it's not like I've never been wrong. But I'm just, I kind of likened it today to like painter's tape. So if Colin Albert, who had both sets of bruised knuckles in that photo, if he beat him up, like, he was very precise to hit him in one part of the back of the head. No body shots, because there were no bruises. No, seems kind of odd. Would they put a suit of armor on him and just and just the face mask so they wouldn't damage it? Like, and go ahead and talk about the raccoon eyes but he didn't have any occipital fractures, no jaw fractures. He wasn't in a fight. So I wish there was a brain surgeon that could tell you that. Oh, wait, there was. There's literally a brain surgeon that will tell you that when you sustain a very hard blow to the back of your head, you'll get that bruising. John knows the name of it. I don't remember it. He's a smart guy. I'm not.
Contracoup bruising?
What is it called, John?
I thought it was contracoup.
God bless you. So the net shift in this whole thing. Oh, wait a minute. Did I miss something? Brennan attacked Dr. Wolfe. Like, first of all, like, you can look at our thumbnail. You put Dr. Wolfe and Dr. Welcher on a thumbnail. Like, who do you think the 30-year-old jury is going to? I think even the judge is sitting there kind of twirling her. Like, he's a good-looking dude. He's got a good personality. Welcher's just like a science dude. And Dr. Wolfe is just like, gives you a direct answer, and that's what people like. That's what people want, especially jurors. But, probably much like the bar, sometimes these engineers do not pass their certification test for accident reconstruction on the first go-around. The problem is, this is the same thing the defense does to prosecution witnesses, by the way. The problem is he minimized what happened, and it was significant. If he had just kind of been more honest about it, I think it would have. I'm not saying he was dishonest about it. What the exchange was like, did you pass your ACTAR the first time around? And he said, I passed the written part. I did not pass the practical part. I had to retake the practical part. And he said, oh, you had to retake the practical part. And Dr. Wolfe said, it wasn't a big deal, blah, blah, blah. And don't think for 1 second a prosecutor or defense attorney is not going to pounce on, oh, it wasn't a big deal, because we're sitting here in a murder trial for the practical. So it wasn't a big deal. And he was like, he just made it worse. Like everything he said, he was like, yeah, I know. I mean, he basically said like, it was just like the low speed crash test part. It was just the arm dummy part. Like, I know what he was trying to say. I give him the benefit of the doubt. I know that the Commonwealth's not going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and they shouldn't. A defense, if I said that on the stand and the defense attorney's not giving me the benefit of the doubt, they're going to pounce on that all day long. Oh, detective. Oh, lieutenant, you think that, you're better than my client? You think that this is a waste of time, which is a whole different line of questioning. But so that didn't come across too well. But I think overall, if you weight it on a scale, people are going to like this guy a little bit more anyway. But it did. It gave the Commonwealth ammo to argue bias and sloppiness. It could erode his authority for some jurors, but just the same on Welcher's side. That other guy that works for his firm, Shannon Burgess, I think his name is. I thought Shannon Burgess was a wide receiver for the Broncos, but he misstated on his curriculum vitae and his resume and his LinkedIn, and it's horrible. It looks bad. It looks so bad. It really looks bad. But then you talk to the guy, you find out he knows what he's doing. You find out he knows his shit. Although the free Karen people are like, no, he doesn't. All right, live in denial. That's fine. So when it comes to the dummy arm mass debate, Brennan argued that a lighter harness suspended test arm understates real forces, and Wolfe replied, the SUV mass swamps arm mass delta. Okay, that's a mouthful. I said the same thing when I was watching this. If you just hold a piece of like string out and punch it, of course it's going to react that way. If you hold a piece of string out and punch it, it's going to cause this pen to do something. So if John's arm was out like this.
Don't bring my arm into this.
Not John, not our John. If John O'Keefe's arm was out like this and free flowing and suspended by Velcro or whatever it was, he said it was a 150-pound test line, which is significant. I mean, but if it's just like free floating in space, yeah, it's going to go flying. Like, yes, you kind of proved the state's point, in my opinion, on that one. And that's maybe advantage because I don't know math. Like I'm dumb when it comes to that kind of stuff. My point was, if he's standing here and that thing hits him, isn't that going to turn his body? Isn't that going to send him flying? Like if you, in football, if you tackle a guy's arm, you might get the ball to cough up, but you're not trying to tackle his arm. You're trying to tackle his whole body. You can push his arm, and that's going to send him off flying. Like, do this on your spouse tonight. I'm not encouraging domestic violence, but like,
guys, Drew played for the 76 Buccaneers. He knows what he's talking about.
I did. If just push their arm and tell me their whole body kinetically doesn't move, like that's exactly the point. It's kind of the point. So again, I know that people are cognitively looking through this lens to find this answer, and other people are looking through this lens to find this answer. I'm kind of looking through both lenses. I think I have formed an opinion, but I could be swayed easily. Not easily. I could be swayed. But I'm also looking at this objectively. And that stood out to me, that there's no arm behind. There's no body. There's no torso behind that. And he's dismissive of it. He's the math guy. I mean, okay, so maybe he's saying the weight of a 60,000 pound SUV wouldn't make a difference. The next thing that stood out to me in these tests were that when they did the breakage of the taillight test, they fired it out of the cannon or whatever. First of all, there was debris that came out. I think we're splitting hairs on that one, no pun intended. But to me, he said, okay, so you recreated this test by sending the taillight at a certain velocity, which is, the same velocity that the Lexus would have been at. What did you use for that? He said, well, we had to modify something. We used a 3D printed arm, and we used foam, like spray foam, to kind of secure it, and it was bolted on and blah, blah, blah. The first thing that came to my mind was, of course you're going to get that result, because there's not the weight of a 60,000 pound, like not the full 60,000 pounds isn't going to be behind that, but it's definitely not going to be the weight of this. It's not going to be the weight of an arm. Even though it's going at the velocity, you can recreate the velocity. I understand that, but there's got to be something to the push behind it. So I could be completely wrong about that. Maybe Welcher is going to address that on Monday. Who knows? I'm just saying those two things stood out to me. I found the guy to be incredibly credible, very charming. I'm as heterosexual as they come, and I found him to be pretty handsome, which probably goes a long way with some jurors, and definitely goes a long way with, the Twitterverse or whatever. But I don't know. Those two things just kind of stood out to me, and there's still this thing stuck in the back of my mind. I swear they are solving two different riddles, and they can both sides can put their best expert forward to passionately argue that they are correct in their own solving of their own riddle. So we'll see if that is what gets cleared up come Monday, because I suspect that's what happened. That's exactly what's happening, but I don't know. So they reemphasized the glass cannon match. So Wolfe doubled down that a 37 mile an hour thrown rocks glass replicates the fracture better than any limb impact. So it's more likely that he threw the glass and it broke the thing. And it does keep alternate objective theory alive. It dovetails with the defense narrative that the taillight was broken before or when he was inside the house. But nobody saw him inside the house. Nobody's testifying to that. To add to the conspiracy that everybody is like, yeah, of course they're not going to testify to that. Well, if they can't, of course not. But if you're saying, no, they had him in there and they, held a pagan ritual over him. And, yeah, I guess. I mean, so the net shift in this whole thing from the beginning when I just did ARCCA to after Dr. Wolfe's testimony is that ARCCA's mechanics are, their stance is unchanged when it comes to the mechanics. The new tests add empirical heft because they used current studies, not stuff from the 70s. I have an opinion on that as well. In cross-exam dents the cross-examination definitely dented Wolfe's optics, but not his core engineering conclusion. So it wasn't like detrimental in the eyes of AI anyway. So they say that the technical edge for the defense grows, but the prosecution definitely sowed some doubt about their integrity based on a lot of that stuff. The jury's going to have to weigh the substance versus the perception. And I told you what I think is going to happen there. So the bottom line is the Dr. Wolfe's latest demonstrations fortify the technical case that the Lexus never produced the taillight brake. See what I'm saying? They're saying it never produced the taillight brake. I get that the state is saying, no, the marks on his arms, that came from the taillight brake. But the marks on his arms also could have come from the shards of the taillight after he threw the glass. They're not, neither side is not saying never. That's what I take away from this. Neither side is saying that. Neither side can conclusively say the other one is wrong. They're just saying that their side is right. Monday's redirect will be pivotal if Wolfe convincingly addresses the dummy mass critique and the phone deletion optics. ARCCA's analysis could emerge as the sturdier forensic pillar in the battle of experts. What they're talking about is the Signal app stuff. Like, I'm telling you, that's shady. Like, you're under the judge's order to turn over your communication with the judge's order, not the prosecution's order. The judge's order to turn over your information of your conversations with ARCCA because there was an allegation that came out after the first trial that they were paid, even though they were already paid by the federal government, they were paid by the defense team. And so they're like, hey, give me all your communication. The judge is like, give me all your communication. Well, it turns out they're using the Signal app, which deletes communication. It deletes your text messages. And when he was pressed, he gave the complete truth about the whole thing. He was like, look, I've never used it with another client. Nope, this is the only time. Like, what do you want Dr. Wolfe to do, really? I mean, like, the defense team is saying, hey, look, we use the Signal app. I need you to download it. And he's probably thinking, Jesus Christ, this is not right, but okay. Or maybe he's thinking, well, all right, I'll download Signal if that's how you want to communicate. But, you know, all of a sudden the text messages vanish. I get that you can make the same argument about phone calls. Like if there's a phone conversation between two people, those vanish after the phone call terminates. But the existence of the phone call still exists, one. And two, this is not a phone call. This is a transcription of a phone call, essentially. And that's something that the court asked for to be produced. And they couldn't produce it because they used methods to circumvent the order. And that was all covered in hearings before the second trial. So I told it we're going to start the experiment over with the new information that was added. And it essentially gave me the same stuff. But there was there's a somewhere here. Okay. Welcher's Aperture LLC, the prosecution's capstone is, you know, the direct exam, the mandate. It was, look, I'm not going to read all of this. In fact, if I'm able to make this into a PDF that's clean, because I couldn't get it to make it a clean PDF. It had little marks all over it, all in it. If I can get this to make a clean PDF, I'll put it on the website. Or not even www. Just go https:////the
Karen
Reed. That's the important part.
Dan wants to say something about 333. I don't know why. He paid $10 to say it. So, I don't know, but what does that mean?
33 and a third. So that's definitely a record speed. Hey, thank you, Rotor Man Dan, for contributing to our livelihood here. It's a super chat of.
Go ahead with your comment, though, Rotor Man. Whatever it is, I don't know if you wanted us to say 333 on the air, but $10 gets you a little bit of attention around here.
$10 goes a long way.
It goes a long way with a man like me.
333, in my estimation, is half of 666.
That's the devil's number,
right? So it's half. It's half the devil. Here is Roto Man. I definitely want to address your stuff. Like I've kind of been neglecting the chat, and I understand there's probably stuff in here, and I'm kind of scrolling through or John's been scrolling through too. So
I have not been scrolling, but I've been scrolling.
Well, what are you doing then? No.
Sitting here.
Thank you for sitting here. I appreciate it because I would have been drowning without you. So, so 333, half the number of the beast. Maybe it's the beast without a lower jaw. Anywho,
Rotor, whatever it is you wanted to say for $10, by all means, go ahead and put it in there, though. I'm still waiting.
Yeah. So in the cross-examination, they admitted that the black box never showed a pedestrian hit. It didn't record one, and insisted that that is normal for human strikes. The defense kind of hammered back with, they pressed whether the phone or E911 data could place O'Keefe elsewhere. That Welcher said that the phone and car track was within 2 feet of impact. So think about that. I mean, we're like 24 inches. So even like in the first trial when Lieutenant Tully, I suggest you go back and watch Lieutenant Tully's testimony, where he talks about how he had troopers, namely Buchanan and Proctor, at the hospital. And through the text messaging, we remember that he said, Proctor said, so Rotor Mandan said, Google Earth blurs out 51 Fairview and now 54 Fairview. If you're not a cop, I'm not knocking you by any stretch of the imagination.
He's a certified automotive technician, and what he's been saying about some of the wheel spin data is very interesting to me. But go ahead, Drew.
Okay, you can contact Google Earth if you're in Florida. We call them special category or something like that. Save your jokes. The bottom line is, if you're a first responder, if you're a cop, a DA, a judge, a public defender, firefighter, paramedic, you can petition Google to blur your stuff out. You can have your stuff removed from the property appraiser's website. And the idea behind it, it sounds more dramatic now because information is everywhere. But it used to be so that people just didn't go down to the courthouse and pull your people you arrested or people you put in prison for the rest of your life or their lives. They can't summons their partner on the outside to go down to the courthouse and pull your deed, figure out where you live, and then, take your kids hostage and kill you when you get home. I mean, that's kind of what that's about. So I find nothing out of the ordinary about Google Earth blurring that. I think it may have come from the Department of Justice even, but
it could also just be blurry there now.
How can we verify that Rotor Mandan's eyes weren't blurry when he was looking at that? How do we know that? Okay. Thank you, Rotor Mandan. So the black box never showed a pedestrian hit. He was forced to admit that. That's fine. Whether how bad or how much the jury weighs that. And then in the redirect, he clarified that the blue paint mark location, it was not a fracture replication, but it was the experiment's aim. It was definitely the aim of the experiment, to be transparent, was to be able to say that Lexus could cause the injuries where they were on John O'Keefe's arm and the bruise on the back of his hand. I guess it would be his right arm. So Welcher he integrated the timeline, the syncing of the phone pings, the EDR throttle. If you remember, it was determined that was 74% in reverse. That was not tow truck data, like everybody thinks. And the laser scan driveway, it gives the time-space match between the SUV's right rear corner and O'Keefe's phone at exactly 12:32 a.m., which is when his phone went dead. This is the true crime part. This is how they solve mysteries. But it's just in this one, there's just so much noise from Alan Jackson. Listen, just so you'll know, because Alan Jackson has smeared cops all over the place, and we're having to do this rehab, and now I'm called a biased cop because I speak the truth. If that's your idea of bias, then yes, I am definitely biased. Alan Jackson represented Harvey Weinstein. He attacked the victims in the Harvey Weinstein case. He got that sentence mitigated, although Harvey was convicted. Alan Jackson was the representative of Kevin Spacey in the Nantucket case, where he was accused of groping a man. The man was later put on the stand, and Alan Jackson attacked his credibility and knew that he had something on his phone that he didn't want out. So he forced the guy to plead the fifth on the stand, and therefore the state was like, we're going to have to withdraw the charges here. We can't. If you can't testify and you can't produce the phone, we don't have a case. And he's like, then I guess he groped me for free, and the defense attorney won. By the way, Kevin Spacey was accused of doing the same stuff in another country, and God rest the soul of the guy that took himself out because of what Kevin Spacey did. So, this guy is defending the best of the best, and I understand why everybody's deifying Karen Reed. She's like likable, and they've made this into the conspiracy that it never was, but they call everything shoddy police work, which is fine. You criticize all you want, but I'm just telling you from experience of having investigated, charged, arrested, put people, had my cases go to trial, testified.
Drew even shot the keys out of a drunk driver's hands once.
What's that?
You shot the keys out of a would-be drunk driver's hands once, outside of a Chipotle.
John, it was not. It was a Rio Bravo cantina. But
I remember wrong sometimes.
John once shot a man for snoring, so you'll know, in the Old West days. So, all that said, it's smear, smear, smear. And this happens in every trial. Like, they're going to discredit the police. It's just how far do you want to buy into it? Like, we're on the heels, or we're on the wake of the 5-year anniversary of George Floyd. People are dying to get back into that rhetoric again. It doesn't mean it's true. And you can, that thin blue line is so thick and they're going to stick up for the brotherhood. Yes, I'm going to stick up for the brotherhood. When we're wrong, I'm going to say we're wrong. But I'll tell you what, if you showed up to your grocery store and you're in line and somebody said, here, I have a $50 coupon for your groceries today, there's no way you're going to say, no, you keep that. You're going to take the $50 coupon. This is exactly what I'm doing. If we're wrong, we'll take responsibility, we'll take the heat, and we'll do everything we need, whatever. That is kind of what we're paid for. But if we're not wrong, you're damn right. I'm gonna launch grenades right back at you. 100% of the time. That is literally why I retired. To be able to open up my mind and open up my lungs and get all of this poison from the last 29 years out of me. Okay? Just so we're clear. The main defense challenges come with the experimental validity, like the paint mark test run at 2 to 3 miles an hour. There's no fracture replication. He was accused of overlay theatrics because of the clothing that he wore, which is the same clothing they put on the dummy, and they're heroes for doing so. The data alignment tweaks, it was a 20-second sync shift that changed that whole timeline, and they're accused of cherry picking the timeline and changing it at the last minute, but you can only testify to what you know to be correct. And people are going to find that suspect all day long. I get it. That could be the issue that teeters this into you can't prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. The cost and bias of Welcher, $325,000, $400,000 budget called a hired gun science. All expert witnesses get paid. I mean,
they have to, otherwise it's slavery. Are you pro-slavery? I put that to the audience. If you say these experts should not be paid, then you are pro-slavery. Speaking of which, make sure you hit like and subscribe and check out our merch.
Hit like and subscribe, check out our merch, and go ahead and leave
Unless
us a
you're
comment if you're
pro-slavery.
pro-slavery. Yeah. And then the present balance. So Welcher does offer the jury one coherent storyboard tying the speed spike, the 74% throttle, the arm wounds, which he replicated, though people don't believe, and the lens break and the ground level head trauma into a Lexus initiated event. He's saying that it could happen, and he shows you how, and he shows you the data. Yet his most photogenic proof, the blue paint demo, operated at walking speed, which gave the defense the opening to argue that the test proved the contact is possible, but it's not actually shattered lens of that 24-mile-an-hour Lexus. So they poked holes in it. That's what they're supposed to do. When you couple that with the high price and the high price tag and the timing corrections and those gaps, the full reasonable doubt arguments, even as the prosecution leans on Welcher's data-rich narrative, it kind of weakens the case a little bit for the Commonwealth. So I told it again, using, hold on a second, this is not the one I want, I don't think. So in the new update with Dr. Wolfe, I asked, are they evaluating the same thing? AI changed its mind based on the new testimony and said, not quite. They said ARCCA was hired to test the original 24-mile-an-hour reverse RAM hypothesis, and their new dummy series still targets whether any arm strike, even down to 5 miles an hour, can reproduce the lens break, and they say no. Welcher assumed the strike did occur and used LiDAR, which is 3D scan, and EDR, which is the box, the black box, to find a plausible contact window in his blue paint demo. That focuses on injury alignment, not fracture mechanics. So they're attacking him for not proving the fracture mechanics when his test never was supposed to do that. Conversely, the prosecution is attacking Dr. Wolfe for something similar, but his test was never supposed to do that. You heard that exchange on Friday. So check this out. Which conclusion is mechanically stronger? The criterion, which was weighted at 20% each. So when it comes to the data breadth and scene fidelity, ARCCA scored a 6 on AI scale, and Welcher scored a 9 because of the LiDAR and EDR phone sync. It gave Welcher a fuller evidentiary map. So we're at 6 to 9 so far. When it came to the laboratory rigor and the repeatability, it goes 8 to 6 in favor of ARCCA. ARCCA's speed control dummy and glass tests follow classic SAE and IRCCA methods, which is another safety board of sorts, industry standard stuff. When it came to internal consistency, this is an overwhelming 8 for ARCCA, 5 for Welcher. ARCCA's test speeds match their fracture threshold argument. Welcher's 2-mile-an-hour paint demo versus a 24-mile-an-hour EDR spike leaves a gap. Stay tuned, because don't forget I asked what happened to John O'Keefe that night. We'll see what AI says. Transparency and conservative language, ARCCA overwhelming 9 to 5. Wolfe openly says, we don't know the cause. Welcher is pushing this single narrative, and he downplays all the other uncertainties. He's saying, if you're saying it couldn't happen, you're incorrect, because it could, and here's how I'm showing you it could. So far? Then the last thing is the narrative coherence for a lay jury. AI probably did not take the charm into account of this, because Welcher is definitely scientific in his furrowed brow. You can see him calculating, like that meme. You could see the calculations. But it's 6-9 in favor of Welcher. It says Welcher's 3D animation of synchronized data gives jurors a vivid one-stop story. So the weighted totals come to 7.3 in favor of ARCCA, 6.8 in favor of Welcher. I don't have a variable. I don't have a variance. I don't know, like, in their weighted scale, I don't have a plus minus. So the bottom line is they were not solving identical problems. One tried to falsify a high-speed collision. The other tried to visualize a low-speed brush and a fall. On this, and when they say falsify, they mean like debunk, not lie. On the strict metric of whether the science fully supports its own claim, ARCCA and Wolfe's conclusion is marginally stronger. It empirically shows what cannot have happened, like that taillight fracture via limb at claimed speeds, whereas Welcher has yet to empirically show his low-speed clip can actually break the lamp. This is what I'm saying. This is so confusing because one's trying to prove for this and the other's trying to prove for that. And this guy doesn't prove this theory and this guy doesn't disprove this. You know what I'm saying? It's a little convoluted. And then you add the conspiracy stuff on top of it, and everyone's just going to jump on the bandwagon and say, "Oh yeah, he's dumb." Like they're calling the biomechanical engineer dumb. I can't balance a checkbook. Nobody can. Nobody does it anymore. But anyway. So it empirically shows that what cannot have happened, the taillight fracture via limb at those claimed speeds, whereas Welcher had yet to empirically show his low-speed clip can actually break the lamp, leaving a key link in the prosecution. So I went into Google. I'm not going to go into all this because, you're probably bored to tears at this point. Oh, by the way, I went into Google. I had to do some deep research. We could do it in another episode if you want. I had to do the deep research. I had it remove all biases. And I said, just give me the straight facts. I could show you the Google thing, but I won't. Like, again, I'm not hiding anything from you. I promise. I'm doing this on my own. And it adjusted the balances. It held the 20% weight again, but it went 6.9, 6.9. It dropped in internal consistency for ARCCA a little bit. It raised Welcher just a little bit, but the end result was pretty much the same. It was 7.4 in favor of ARCCA to 6.9. So we're talking about 0.5%, or not 0.5%, but 0.5 point of margin. So take that as you will. The final synthesis after the bias filter pass that you remember I told you I used Gemini to do some bias-free. I don't want any these opinions about the Blue Man Group and all this other shit. Just give me the straight facts of both sides. And I fed that into Google. It came back with 12 sources. I have those listed in a bibliography. I put that into ChatGPT and it said both experts still worked on different problems. ARCCA tried to falsify a high energy car strike. Welcher tried to visualize a low speed brush, and the Gemini memo confirms this mission split. So a separate AI confirmed that. The key mechanical gap persists because no witness has yet broken the Lexus lens with a flesh surrogate in the exact place and pattern observed. ARCCA got closer, but still disavowed the match. Welcher never attempted it at strike level speed. He didn't do it at the 23.9 miles an hour. Credibility skirmish is noise, not signal. Gemini's bias audit flags personality perceptions and fee angst, but those don't introduce new contradictory physics. The one thing I found interesting about Gemini is I asked him very specific information about Wolfe, ARCCA, Welcher, and anybody from ARCCA and their sworn testimony. and it still found not Jen. It found Carrie Robinson's testimony and included that initially, which is why I had to go back and clean it and tell it to take all that shit out, take all the bias out. So the bottom line, nothing in the bias filter Gemini analysis overturns ARCCA's experimental edge. If anything, it slightly strengthened it. It strengthened their claim that the Lexus strike scenario, as currently modeled, leaves clinical forensic blanks unfilled. But again, we're talking about the taillight shatter. We're not talking about whether or not John was knocked over by the Lexus. Just food for thought. Based on your analysis of their testimony and all associated instructions and supported documentation, what is the likely scenario that happened to John O'Keefe that night? Is it possible he was struck? Do your findings support a more likely scenario considering they were solving for different problems? Here's the finale, folks. Cheers to you. I'm going to read it to you. I need a sip. Hopefully you can take a sip of whatever you have. Again, this is Guinness Zero. Been sober for 17 years. Oh, that's wet. So here we go. The most plausible chain of events on 34 Fairview Road. The synthesis of every sworn test, dummy study, laser scan, and bias filtered review. Number one, that reverse surge really happened. The tech stream data shows Reed's Lexus accelerated to around 24 miles an hour in reverse for over 80 plus feet at exactly 12:32 a.m. Another fact is that O'Keefe's phone stopped moving within that same period. AI did not say within that exact moment, like Welcher did. The interpretation is the car and the victim came dangerously close in time and space. So whatever happened next is what happened next. It's not going to draw that conclusion. It did say, as far as the tail lamp shattered at some point before the 5 a.m. garage bump. Both experts in the finite element model agree that the low speed tap can't break the lens. So the low speed tap on John's car could not have caused that, even though you saw the wheel rock forward. No witnesses recall the lamp broken earlier that evening. I know what you're going to say, Sergeant Barrows. But the fracture either occurs, therefore occurs sometime between leaving the waterfall at 12:15 more or less and the garage bump. So it could have happened when he dropped her, when she dropped him off. It could have happened on the way home when she kicked up a piece of wood off the snowy road. That's all it's saying. Number three, the biomechanics. A lethal ground level head impact with minimal limb damage. ARCCA's drop tests and Welcher's injury database both show a headfirst fall onto frozen ground can kill without breaking any arms or any legs. Everyone agrees that the wounds are light for a 20 plus mile per hour pedestrian hit. So even Welcher, who used studies from the 70s that were likely outdated because vehicles are outdated, because vehicles have been updated, I guess I should say. Vehicles aren't outdated. I still maintain the one thing that really hasn't changed since the 70s is physics. You can't change that. And though I said this earlier in a comment to somebody, like, look, I get that a country squire is definitely different than a...
You have to tell people what you mean by that when you say a country squire.
A country squire is an old station wagon like that was on the Brady Bunch. So it was a beast. Like, cars were just hunks of metal.
Had a V8, a third seat that faced backwards.
Yeah.
We should
Yeah,
hit
they
John
weren't
with one
dangerous
of
at all.
those to see how just for comparison.
Okay, so at any rate, a car in that era, I'll just leave it at that, in the 70s, was a big hunk of metal. And a Prius, like, I can move out of a parking lot with a clean and jerk. So cars are built differently, and so the science changes a little bit when it comes to pedestrian accidents. They're saying that like a certain amount of pedestrian accidents, a certain percentage, like the probability is that it's an injury to the head from that era. And then when when it kind of like shifts into this era, they're saying from like the fall from or the most injuries actually come from broken limbs or broken bones or whatever, because the cars are different. They're softer, I guess. So everybody agrees that the wounds are light for a 20-mile-an-hour hit. I still say, like, look, that's not a typical car. That's not a Prius she was driving. That's a 6,000-pound. That's a beast. It was a 4-wheel drive, by the way. So there's even more weight to it. I guarantee it's a special class when she goes to renew the registration, although she's never going to do it. 2 mechanically defensible pathways. Low-speed Lexus clip, spin, and a fatal fall under Welcher's theory. It integrates the EDR, the phone, the LiDAR into one timeline. The arm paint demo shows geometric possibility of forearm to lamp contact, and it does explain why head, not limbs, sustained catastrophic trauma. The open flaws are that the paint test run at 2 to 3 miles. It was run at 2 to 3 miles an hour, never proved that a clip at any speed that can break the lamp, as they alleged. No dummy test reproduces the spiderweb fracture with the flesh that everyone thinks is a dog bite, though the dog needed a lower jaw. And it needed the lens to fall exactly when the contact occurs, and that's yet to be unproven because there's still going to be motion involved on both the human being and on the vehicle, and you're never going to be able to replicate that, ever. No one's ever going to be able to replicate that. The non-vehicular fall or an assault with a head impact, or the lamp broken by a rigid object like the glass, a curb, which is Wolfe or ARCCA's theory. The strengths are that the 37-mile-an-hour glass cannon perfectly recreated the fracture morphology. 3 dummy impacts up to 24 miles an hour failed to mirror lamp break or sleeve damage. And drop test matches injuries without the vehicle hit. So hitting his head as a result, maybe even jumping out of the way of the car and hitting his head. That's a possibility. The open flaws in that are the paint tests run at 2 to 3 miles an hour. They never proved. Oh, I'm sorry. The open flaws of that were that offers no documented timeline to explain why the glass or other object was hurled at the exact second the reverse spike happens. So they're saying that the distance the glass was thrown at the velocity the glass was thrown and the velocity the vehicle was. Look, all of this is so precise. This is what I'm saying. It's like hard to replicate, but this is what they do. These are the biomechanical engineers. This is what they do for a living. The other open flaw was that the dummy arm at 24 miles an hour did crack a lens, though the morphology was off, and it's showing limb fracture isn't possible. So which scenario edges ahead? The fracture mechanics favor path B. The fracture mechanics, every empirical attempt to smash the Lexus lens with a limb has fallen short of the real spiderweb pattern, and ARCCA's rigid test nailed that. So they're saying the edge goes to ARCCA if you're talking about fracture mechanics. However, if you're talking about timeline, the timeline coherence favors path A, because Welcher's data sync places the car and the victim together at the fatal instant. Path B still has to hypothesize a near simultaneous glass strike or unknown assault that nobody else is saying, that nobody else can prove, which is why they keep pushing the theory. If nobody can prove it, nobody can disprove it. And as far as like the Ring camera across the street, like, well, the Ring camera would have, obviously they deleted that Ring camera because they didn't want people to see them dumping his body like right near the curb where he would have fallen if he got hit by a car, to be seen by everybody. Yes, true. That footage would have shown that, but it also would have shown Karen Reed backing into him. So I don't think there's anything nefarious about there not being any Ring phone data. I mean, Ring camera data from across the street. I think we've relied too heavily on there being cameras everywhere for everything. It's kind of creepy, to be honest. It's helped me in investigations. I don't know what to say about that. Like, we used to solve crimes without cameras, believe it or not.
As long as everyone's watching everyone else all the time, we'll have a perfect society.
Yes. John, put the carrots down. I see what you're doing. Credibility and bias are definitely a wash, according to ChatGPT. So Gemini's bias audit shows both experts have money, ego, and procedural blemishes. Neither side's soft spots alter the physics. The critical missing piece for either path is that no test to date has reproduced both the lens fracture and the exact abrasion pattern at any speed with a realistic flesh surrogate. So AI did me, just like it did you, because the bottom line likelihood based on an engineering evidence, John O'Keefe unquestionably died from a ground level head impact. Not from being beat. He was either pushed down or pushed away by a car, and the ground caused that. Whether the Lexus triggered the fall remains unproven. A glancing brush at the very end of the reverse run is mechanically possible, and it fits the clock, but it still lacks the fracture confirmation of the glass. The taillight. A stumble assault plus a rigid object lens strike explains the damage pattern, but it struggles to match the tight phone and EDR sync. Like, that's too coincidental to dismiss. Here's the final result. Given the unresolved fracture test and the impeccable timeline alignment, the probabilities today look roughly balanced. The scenario, a low-speed Lexus clip caused the fall, about 45 to 55%. The fall or assault plus a separate rigid object breaking the lamp before they even, the whole thing happened, about 45 to 55%. Until a laboratory arm or a biofidelic surrogate actually shatters an RX 350 tail lamp in the same way at the documented impact speed or a timeline matched alternative object strike is demonstrated, reasonable doubt persists on both sides. So yes, O'Keefe could have been struck, but the current biomechanical record leaves the Lexus clip hypothesis no more mechanically proven than a non-vehicle fall plus a rigid object break. They were solving different sub-problems. Neither has yet closed the loop. So what's that boil down to?
John's still alive.
It could be. This boils down to what the other evidence is and how credible those witnesses are. So the other evidence, such as the taillight fragments in his clothes at the hospital, that everybody says, no, he had 10 days to plant those taillights. Okay. He wasn't at the scene yet. And if you go back and you watch Lieutenant Tully's testimony, he gives you the whole, like, he cuts open the bags, he opens the taillights, he shows the clear lens, he shows the taillight, all of that was recovered while Buchanan and Proctor were at the hospital, because Buchanan and Proctor said, "Hey, Lieutenant, we're going to need a CERT team out here to help search for evidence. You can make all the noise you want about snowblowers and Canton cops and all this other stuff. There are pictures of the taillight and the clear taillight piece and CERT team members recovering taillight pieces and John O'Keefe's matching shoe. They had one shoe at the hospital. They found the other shoe in the snow right by the taillight pieces. It was all covered in snow because there was a blizzard rolling through. Somebody questioned me today about that. A blizzard? Are you kidding me? I was like, are you sure? Are you sure you know anything about this case?
Was it a blizzard, though? What's the definition of a blizzard? You don't have to have a lot of snow for a blizzard. You just have to have a lot of wind.
Oh, let's go back to, a lot of wind that blows snow that covers shit. Like taillights, like
for
John O'Keefe.
For me, this is just as me, someone who lives in the snow, the timeline of everything, like when did the snow start? Like we want to talk about wheel spin and things like that. You could have snow starting and you can have a blizzard that's blowing snow and snow isn't actually accumulating anywhere because of the wind. And so your wheels are not necessarily going to spin. Whereas then if you start to have drifts, then we're talking about John being partially covered. Like I want to know like the final snowfall and like when was the storm in. It actually does matter. Like we all talk pretty obliquely about the snow, but there's a lot of detail in the snow to be found.
I understand that it matters, but there's also a point where the snowfall is so great that it's going to outweigh the wind.
Right.
The blizzard condition is a road visibility issue.
But when,
I get it.
Though. Yeah, but when?
I get it, but if it's a road visibility
because you watch the dash cam video by the morning and it's a fucking mess. But what was it 6 hours before that?
And also when you watch Lucky's the video of Lucky driving back and forth, it's the same thing. So there was a kid. Listen, this is what I keep saying. Everyone's like, all you got to do is listen to the plow driver because he would have seen it. Okay, why was there a plow driver out? The plow driver was out because there was accumulating snow on the roads. He wasn't a salt truck driver. He was a plow driver. And he was specifically pushing stuff to the right. He said that. And you can talk about this Ford Edge all day long that you want. If you're driving a plow, and look, I'm not Lucky. Maybe he's this skilled. But if you're driving a plow, I guarantee if you're going around a Ford Edge, given the fact that you've already knocked down a basketball hoop, your eyes are going to be affixed to the edge of that plow and the edge of that Ford Edge. And you're just going to make it around. You're not going to be looking off into the lawn.
As someone who was run off the road by a state plow, I can tell you that they are reckless people.
Was it a salt truck also?
Do you remember that when I was like late to the show? Because like I almost died.
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do remember.
It was like episode 5.
I do remember that. We could have done that. So look, Lucky's testimony was 100% honest and truthful. He believes what he believes. He believes what he saw. I don't think it really proved anything, to be honest. But that's me. I could be sadly mistaken. Like, oh, maybe this whole case hinges on Lucky the plow driver. If you want to get into the two officers, I think that would be a whole separate episode. But I'm telling you, look, Miss Sassy Pants on the Sand definitely looked bad. She looked inexperienced. But here's what I'll say about that. Why are you putting me on the stand for your bullshit client who can't take responsibility for her shit? Why are you dragging me into your drama? Because what you've done to her now is that all of the, free Karen Reed, they're all saying, oh, she's a liar and she's snide and she represents police everywhere. We've even got people saying now, obviously the Boston Police Commissioner's in on this.
Goes all the way to the top.
It goes all the way to the top at a different agency. Because they
Don't
told
you
her
know
to,
that
quote, do the
Boston's
right
the
thing.
biggest and most important police agency in that whole area? Thus, they have control over all the little ones. That's how it works.
It's like a kingdom, a fiefdom. So she's put in a very bad position. I can empathize why she was pissed. I don't think she went about it right, but I get it. And she made herself look bad. But she was screwed either way. She was done for. But I'll tell you what she was not doing was lying. I'll leave it at that. Like, if you remember something some way, if you like John, if I say to you, I know for a fact my car was in the garage at 7 this morning. I know for a fact. There's no two ways about it. And you tell everybody that, and I tell everybody that, and even if I write it in a police report, and then the FBI comes and says, "Hey, we're just having trouble reckoning what you saw." Like I don't know how you could have seen that, because here's the stamp, the timestamp from 7 a.m., and there's no car in there. And then you're thinking to yourself, fuck, maybe I did miss something. You cannot then get on the stand and say, yes, it is truthful that I saw X, Y, and Z. You have to say, I originally thought I saw X, Y, and Z. I was shown contradictory evidence. I have since changed my stance. It is a false memory. And tell me the sleaze of a defense attorney saying, fine, we're just going to put you on the stand anyway. You'll be subpoenaed and you'll have no choice but to show up. And I can hear her saying, like, very snotty, like, I'm just going to testify to the other, that I never saw it. And them saying, oh, great, because we can easily get you charged with perjury for that. I can hear it as plain as day. I can hear that conversation. I guarantee that's what happened. I will guarantee it. So she went in there with attitude, immaturity. She kind of knew she was screwed either way, because now all of Boston hates her. But if she didn't testify, all of Boston would have hated her. You know what I mean? Like, she is so screwed. But I mean, what it comes down to is, like, she remembered something a certain way and she told a lot of people about it. That's what got her into trouble. That's what got her there. It's not necessarily her fault. I do believe she's telling the truth. That's fine. You could say she's lying.
I don't think you were making the case for a false memory. Someone said that you were trying to make the case for a false memory. No, you could kind of sort of think something, believe something, have it set on your routine and think that this is normally what would happen, and you were sure you put it away. I mean, if you've ever lost your keys, it's not a false memory. You just don't remember exactly what happened. You're like, I swear I put it here. I normally put my car in the garage.
Right.
For me, the weirdest thing is that if John went inside the house, he still managed to die in the same place that Karen last saw him when she dropped him off. I don't know.
I wish I could play the gorilla experiment, John, because
I know the gorilla experiment.
That's exactly that would sum up the
false. Are we allowed to play it?
That would clear up. She's like, people are taking this to be like she's intentionally not remembering it so she can cover for her buddies. That's not what she's saying at all. What she's saying is she remembered it this way. She was shown evidence to the contradictory. And now if she testifies to how she originally saw it, just like the defense wants her to, she is lying. And she can't do that. That's why she called the FBI. That's why she called and asked them. Like, is this considered perjury? Like, I didn't remember that way. Like, and everyone's gonna say, oh, they put pressure on her because we believe that this is a big conspiracy. Okay. Have at it. I mean, you believe Harvey Weinstein's attorney has laid the groundwork. So Karen Reed is completely innocent. When, by the way, they have never disputed any of these taillight pieces, and they've created illusions that they were planted, but mysteriously they've never disputed again, it's the here we have a theory that says that she could have clipped him. She may not have even known. And they're saying, yeah, but we can prove the taillight didn't break. And everyone in America is like, yeah, they can prove the taillight didn't break. Okay. Have at it. This is why I say that this is up to the jury. This is not up to us. So, I will tell you this too, though. The sergeant who turned everyone back into falling in love with law enforcement again, Sergeant Barrows, he remembers exactly what he remembers. He didn't lie. I don't think he false remembered anything. He remembers exactly what he remembers, and he testified to what he remembered. He gave a little bit extra testimony this time, but that's his business. I don't think he was lying. What everybody is forgetting, though, is that he is literally testifying that the taillight was broken. It proves the Commonwealth's theory, if anything, because they called him several times to say, hey, we're coming to Dighton. We definitely need to contact this girl. We're going to talk to her family, but we're probably going to take the Lexus. Everyone's making a big deal about that. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. I've done that 1,000,000 times. In good faith, I know I'm going there to seize a Lexus. I know for a fact that's where I'm going. I just need to make sure it gets past the judge first. I need to make sure that the Commonwealth and the judge will sign the seizure order or the search warrant or whatever. But when I make that phone call to the neighboring jurisdiction, my intent is not like, hey, once I procedurally, no, I'm just going to keep it short and simple. Hey, there's this house in Dighton. We think it's involved in this thing, but eventually we're going to make our way over there. Could you send somebody by real quick to see if there's a Lexus in the driveway? And by the way, we're going to come there and interview and seize the Lexus. So we need your help. We need your presence. That's it. I don't think he lied. I don't think it did anything for the defense. I don't think it supported anything, but everyone, we were back in the streets celebrating cops again. Like, that's a real police officer. He's just like every other cop. He's like every other one of them. It's just that you choose to believe the defense's theory. And if AI can't make the decision, I don't know what to tell you, dude. It's a close call. It's definitely we're definitely in the 9th inning here, or maybe the 10th or 11th. So just one last thing to get off my chest. I mean, I'll go through comments if people want to, the way to my heart. You know how to get my attention. But she is not required to testify in this case because the burden of proof is on the state. The state's the one accusing her. And if I were her attorney, I would tell her, fuck no, you're not getting on that stand. Because why? Because you know it's going to happen. You know exactly what's going to happen. There is a reason. She has no obligation to get on the stand. I get it. There is a reason she's not getting on the stand. There is a reason they're pointing all of their fingers to include her, to call this a conspiracy, to say that she's lying, to say that he's lying, that they know each other, that he bribed her. There's a reason they're doing that. They're doing that because they don't have to testify to anything. They don't have to swear. They don't have the burden to prove anything. They don't have to prove there was a conspiracy. They just have to plant it in your mind. She doesn't have to prove that she didn't back into her boyfriend and kill him, which I think she did, whether she knew it or not. She doesn't have to. That's how the justice system works. But I guarantee they are telling her, well, she's not dumb enough to get on the stand in the first place. But she sits there with that smug smile, and she's got 96% of America behind her, behind St. Karen, and she knows exactly what happened. She was there. This is not like a whole cloth false accusation. This went through levels. This went through a grand jury. So what you're saying with all this conspiracy stuff is that not only did the DA and the judge and everybody else conspire, they got everybody on the grand jury to conspire as well. It didn't happen that way. Seriously, Genta's saying, seriously, false memory. She made statement and it was pretty specific, and the time of car being brought is an hour off. It's an hour off from what? I just literally just told you, like, what does that prove? Like if I write in my supplement that we arrived at the Sallyport at 5:30, when it was actually 4:30, okay? I mean, like, carry it further. Show me, because here's the deal. Karen Reed is innocent until proven guilty, and she can point the fingers, and you can make all these accusations about Michael Proctor and it was an hour off and all this other stuff, but they are guilty until proven innocent for some reason. Like, they don't get the same benefit. Prove it. Show me a scintilla of evidence that something is off here. Because everything that you're saying is a series of interference from the defense table. People who don't have to testify, people who are going to pick up and leave that town the minute this trial is over, and they don't give a shit about the condition they left it in. They don't care one bit. They don't care that the citizens don't trust the cops anymore. They don't care that the citizens are attacking cops, that they're threatening Lucky. They don't care one bit. All they care about is, we just don't want her to take any responsibility whatsoever for this. None. Not only is she not going to prison, she's not going to get any responsibility. She's not going to take any responsibility. If you don't see her answer when she's outside the courtroom after Judson Welcher testified, they asked her specifically, well, what about the data, Karen? I mean, and she goes, she snap answers everybody else. She works the crowd. She's a celebrity. And they go, what about the data, Karen? And she goes, the data is the data. Yep, the data is the data. She's not disputing it because she can't. She says, show me the exact, replicate the backing into John O'Keefe, dig John up out of the thing and hold him, like, she knows they're not going to be able to replicate that. The data's the data. So, like, go ahead, hold her up on your shoulders in her mighty throne. Just understand, you're cheering for a drunk driver. I get that all the cops were just as complicit. I would venture to say that probably a lot of their wives drove, but they didn't kill anybody. So that's what I'm saying. Does anybody else have anything? I love Southern New Hampshire, by the way. I love that whole area. I really do. I love, people have all these issues with, like, oh my God, that so and so they went through the yearbook and they showed everybody and they all know each other. Yeah, yes. They all grew up with one another. It just shows that they're professionals, that they all got jobs. They went to law school somewhere. Some became police officers. Some became firefighters. Edward McDonald says, Birchmore. You can go to commcenter.com/Karen Reed, and you can see the Matthew Farwell detention order done by the FBI. They did a solid job. Hopefully he's facing the death penalty because he's a monster. That's not endemic in law enforcement. That is probably in other words, that guy slipped through the cracks or whatever. He got through. He not only groomed and hammered this underage girl, he got her pregnant, and then he killed her. So when you guys, start comparing me to him, yeah, there's definitely an issue with that. Like I got nothing for you. Like you're gonna get some terse words from me. If you think that that's me, or if you think that we're gonna cover for that, yeah, all right, whatever. Hey, we did a whole episode on Sandra Birchmore. We did a whole episode on God rest her soul. She didn't deserve that. She was a victim of the system from minute one. Just a troubled kid, just wanted to be an explorer. We started off this whole thing with an overview where John and I both swore up and down that she was completely innocent. I don't think that way anymore. I don't know what John thinks. I don't want to speak for John. I think I know what he thinks. Then we went into...
What do I think about Karen or Sandra?
Karen.
I keep going back and forth with Karen. And I think anyone actually... I think if you're watching both sides, and I think if you're thinking critically, I think if you're not going back and forth, then you're locked into a confirmation bias, because it's not over with.
It's not.
The jury still has stuff that they need to see, the stuff that still needs to be examined and cross-examined. So if you already made up your mind, then I guess your mind's closed to additional truths which have yet to be revealed. And you might come across a piece of evidence that discounts something that you already know or already believe. This case is already nuts enough that a lot of stuff has come around to undermine things that you thought when you were just learning about this case. So since it hasn't been given to the jury yet, and you already decide, I mean, I understand that you may feel now that there's reasonable doubt or that the state hasn't proven their case, but it's not done yet. So I would say the jury's not asked to deliberate yet. Of course they are, privately to themselves. But until they give it to the jury, I guess I don't think that you should make a final decision on it. Otherwise, you're just not being open-minded.
Yes. And that's the beauty of the system. It's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's what the jury is going to be voting on. I hopefully, like I said at the top of the show, like hopefully they're not hearing the noise that we're all hearing, and they're not seeing the cheerleading that we're all seeing.
Juries also frequently get it wrong too. I mean, OJ walked, so I mean, whatever result that we get from the jury too, it might be shocking. You never know.
Casey Anthony walked.
Scott Peterson went to prison.
Well, he don't even.
I don't think he did it.
Funny you say that.
Drew can't get behind that one.
No. Funny you say that, because that is the Alan Jackson, Mark Garagos MO.
The Innocence Project's looking at Scott Peterson, so we'll see.
Of course they are. It's Barry Sheff. It's the same guy from the OJ case. Of course they are. The Innocence Project was looking at the Menendez brothers.
I don't like them either. I would have put them to death. I love it when we disagree, by the way.
I love it when we disagree, but we agree that we disagree.
Well, you and I do it pretty well, I guess. I don't know.
Man, I can't wait for John to get his.
I worry that if, like, suppose this, Karen walks and it's right or wrong, what then? Someone ever going to be convicted for murdering John? I care most about John. I don't care about Karen. I don't care about Michael Proctor. I care about John. And I feel like, I've said this in the chat, so I feel like we all, for some reason, there's so much emotional fervor about this case. People are so mad about the cops. People are all in for Karen as though she's some kind of hero, which she's not. And, right. but like, what's going to happen for John? Like, if Karen walks, they're not going after somebody else. Who are they going to go after? Because the whole first trial is all reasonable doubt for whoever comes next. So
No, I'm pretty sure it's going to be like the OJ thing. It would be like,
yeah, Nicole Brown
like,
Simpson
so what now?
never got any. She never got any justice.
They're going to be like, what now? And they're going to be like, yeah, what now? We know we had the killer. We know for a fact we had the killer. In fact, it'll probably be a little bit more like
they can't in good conscience go after this DA can't in good conscience go after someone else because they're like, oh well, you were so sure it was Karen Reed before, and now a jury said no, so you're just going to keep fishing.
That's why this decision is so important. That's why I said
for John, it's all or nothing now.
It's all or nothing. And I'll guarantee when the burden of proof is preponderance of the evidence, she'll never make a dime ever again. It's going to the O'Keefe family. I'll guarantee that. Like now, like they could take that. She could walk away from this scot-free, but she's going to be civilly sued.
But Alan Jackson's going to get those Netflix rights.
Right. Well, that's what's going to happen.
Well, because why else is he in it? He's not in it. There's some kind of contract. It's not completely pro bono.
No, but here's the thing. She got all of that out of the way. They probably got paid by Dateline too, because they know that judgment is coming. That's what that is all about. So there will be like they took the sting out of a biography, or they took the sting out of a made-for-TV movie or whatever, because they've already done it. And they've already collected on it. And she used it to defend herself for killing that guy. So go ahead, deify her. St. Karen.
I don't like her that much.
I'm the evil one. Can I
risk something pretty unpopular?
Please.
There's a reason why Michael Proctor really doesn't like her. What is that reason?
Yeah.
Because, like, Drew, you've investigated a lot of people. Some really bad folks, and I don't think you necessarily were calling them the C word and all this. So what is it that she did that really got under her skin? I'm just saying, Drew, let's open it up to a broader conversation, because you spent your 29 years doing this, and I've spent 16 years hearing multiple sides of arguments, my current job and former job. But
for those of you who don't know John's former job, he was a safe cracker for the Gambino mob.
I was for a little bit, just one day, and I didn't even go out on that many jobs.
Just one big gig.
But when you're investigating a case, whether it's domestic, family issues, there's rarely anybody in an investigation that's 100% clean, 100% innocent. No. Sometimes there are, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions on any particular victim or any particular person or class of people. I don't want to say well, domestic violence victims have it coming to them. I'm just saying, just even something as simple as a traffic complaint. Someone will call in and say, "Hey, this guy's following me. He's honking his horn at me, giving me the finger." They'll dial 911 for this. And every bone in my body has to say, what did you do to him? Why is he mad at you? It's clearly a road rage incident. You must have cut him off or merged wrong or something. And all this to say is that there's something else there. And I'm not saying it even matters, but I'm curious. I'm curious what's going on with Karen, because a lot of people think that she's a saint, put a halo around her. But Michael Proctor dug into her a little bit. You could say whatever you want about Michael Proctor, and I'll defer to that. I'm not here to absolve Michael Proctor, but he thinks something about Karen Reed, and how did that opinion form? That's all I'm curious about. I'm just a curious guy. That's why my friends call me Whiskers.
The thing I think that the people overlook, and I'm not taking up for this guy. I definitely want to deliver this perspective, though. What you don't understand about some of the things that these homicide investigators go through, because they'll never share it with you. I have a lot of close friends that were homicide investigators. I was never one, to be clear. But you are definitely attached to that case. You don't want to show any bias in the case, because you will lose it. You know you're going to lose the case if you do that. But you get very close to family members. You get close to everybody involved, because you are invested. You're speaking for the dead. And a lot of people just dismiss that of Michael Proctor, which is fine because he used the C word and he said some very dirty things on a text message. Okay. Here's the deal. You know the family. You have to deliver the bad news to the family. Well, he didn't know the family before this, but you have to deliver the bad news to the family. Then the family starts telling you things like, I can't believe he's gone. He just was celebrating his niece's acceptance into this school. His niece just lost her mom 4 or 5 years ago, then her dad 10 days later or a year later or whatever it was. And then John finally stepped up and they were just getting stable. Like, you can't tell me that you, Michael Proctor, who is in charge of solving this guy's murder, doesn't get the shit beat out of him emotionally every time he talks to Peggy O'Keefe. You'll never convince me of that. Ever. Because I know, and that's something from a perspective of people that I'm very close with and people that I know, and stuff I've experienced to a very, very smaller degree. And it's tough to emote, and it's tough to explain that to people. And people reject it like, oh, it's a bunch of bullshit. You know what? Somebody argued with me the other day in the comments about, oh, you guys think just because you're cops that you see more trauma than the average person. We all see trauma.
I literally send people into trauma. Someone calls me because they're in trauma, and I say, cop, go to that. So yes.
Like, yeah, right. Please tell me the last time you woke up in a cold sweat because you were thinking about the little boy you pulled out of a pool
Cops
while
will go to
his
multiple
parents were
shit in a
screaming
day.
in your face. Please tell me.
Multiple shit in a day. Like, that's the thing. Like, just think about the way the system aggregates trauma. Okay. So like, you have a traumatic incident. You were in a car accident on the interstate and a guy's arm was off. That's pretty bad. Okay. So that happened at noon. Well, a cop shift is from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. He responds to that arm off thing. Well, this whole area that he works in, everyone's dialing 911 in this era. Anytime something, their unique bad day happens to them, and they're not going to dial 911 twice in a day for 2 arms off. It's only going to happen to them once today, but that cop is going to respond to both incidents. Later that day, there's a motorcycle accident and a leg's off, and the cop's going to that one too. So an arm off at noon and 4 p.m. a leg off. He's going to both. So we aggregate all the trauma in one place, we funnel it into the comm center, and we shoot it out all over the cops. So yes, police officers are basically charged with going into traumatic situations. That's just how the system works. That's what happens when you dial 911.
Definitely a greater conversation
because asking for cops to come there.
Definitely a greater conversation because that's the genesis of this show. This is what people think that we're just like some Karen Reed channel, and
I hate Karen Reed.
I hate Karen Reed. I think my favorite comment is, "Oh, you're just a bunch of Johnny Come Latelys." I'm like, okay, you should look at the 400 videos we've done to this point.
I'll have you know, we've been toiling in obscurity for years.
Yeah, maybe you're a Johnny Come Lately. Maybe you're a Johnny Come Lately. I couldn't give a shit less about you. But the greater conversation is what John is describing, like the level of trauma that a 911 dispatcher goes through. It's something that's I'm very passionate about, that people just don't get, they don't understand, and they get downright cruel, just like they do in this case. Like, they just automatically take everybody else's side, automatically assume the dispatcher's wrong, have no clue what it's like to actually sit in the chair. Frankly, that's what this show is about. Like, it just happened to have morphed into this. So, all right, John, I'm very depressed now, and
you're very sleepy. You have to wake up early in the morning to mow your lawn.
to mow the sidewalk.
Drew wakes up every Sunday morning at 5 a.m. to mow his lawn.
I do. But thank you all for being here. You're all very special. I sincerely hope you do look around at our catalog. We have some pretty compelling stuff.
Hit subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Do all of that.
I'm not going to sit here and congratulate John. We get accused of that all the time, but
I did do a good job.
You did a good job tonight. You did a great job tonight. But we have some very thought-provoking episodes. We are not one-dimensional. You know, we are the Judson Welcher 3D model of of true crime. We show you what the dispatchers do and what they go through and what they feel, and we can give you hard evidence, and then we show you what the cops are thinking. And I endure being called an apologist at every turn, but like I said, if we're wrong, I'll say we're wrong.
You
if
know
we're
what?
right, you have no business talking. Like you can challenge it, but you're not going to just turn around and walk away from the conversation without hearing my side of the story.
A good palate cleanser for anyone who's watching. If you're watching us right now and you want to watch more Comm Center, go watch the Ruby Frankie episode.
Oh yeah,
go watch that, because that's a 911 dispatcher who's on the phone with someone who finds a little boy who's emaciated, wasted. Her voice. She obviously cares about the situation so much. Police officers arrive. They're looking at little kids who have been abused. You know, you're so sick of the Michael Proctors. You're so sick of the corrupt cops. Well, let's look at those. Let's look at that case where the police and the people that we pay to protect us and the ones we want to be the good guys, watch our breakdown of that. You know, that's a case where you can get a little bit of a palate cleanse, and you can talk about somebody else for a change. And I don't think that you should watch too much Karen Reed coverage, to be honest with you, because it's a big black pill.
It is
for the police department, and it's not at all representative of what the police are. In fact, the reason why it's such a big case is because it's the exception. It's the exceptions that get all the bad press, all the negativity. And I said it in the last episode, but it's like outrage drives an algorithm, and sensation sells, you know, commercials for Concerta or whatever, Pfizer commercials. But there's good stuff out there, and there's good stuff for you to see, and we do cover it here on the channel. And you should absolutely go watch the Ruby Frankie episode. And we have many other episodes in which we deal with all aspects of police stuff. So
we deal with veteran suicides. We deal with we'll walk you through exactly what happened. Like, and for a dispatcher like John to say, you know, like he's saying with the Ruby Frankie thing, like, you just completely melt when you hear the old man talking to this little boy who's been brutally, savagely abused. And there's a dispatcher on the other end of the line, like, comforting him. So that's like 2 levels of trauma that she's dealing with. And that's what John does. He does it for a living, and he takes shit on the side from.
And then the cops are bringing the little kid pizza, and the little kid doesn't believe that she even deserves pizza. Right. And she's sitting there, and she won't take.
Because nobody likes the fucking cops.
Yeah, he's like, I brought you a pepperoni pizza. And she just like, justice for George Floyd. You know, she didn't want any part of
it. A-cab. Get out of here, fucking A-cab with your pizza.
She's 4 years old. She got an A-cab tattoo. That's not what happened, everyone. Go watch the episode just to make sure that's not what happened.
Make sure that's not what happened. You need to go watch the episode. Well, John, thanks for jumping in and rescuing me like you always do. And listen, everyone, thanks for hearing me out. I just thought it was a kind of a cool experiment to pull AI into this, and it had some pretty interesting things. And if anything, it kind of tells you, like, AI is... it's artificial intelligence. It's supplemental. Like, it takes an intelligent individual to get the artificial part out. I'm not, I'm not patting myself on the back, but it's not going to be committal. It's not going to tell you, like, it's not going to tell you anything that you probably would not have come to the conclusion at some point on, because we fed it so much, or I fed it so much data, and I fed it so much bias-free information, and it still came down to, you can flip a coin on this one. We're not really sure, but thanks for asking. So,
all right, guys, make sure you check out all of our videos. Make sure you're hitting like and subscribe. We appreciate everybody who's here, and to everybody in the chats, if you disagree with us and whatever, we just appreciate that you're here and that you say what you say. We don't all have to agree. We don't all have to. But we get along here. We have discourse without discord, and everyone in the chats has been super cool tonight, even when it gets pretty heated. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's willing to show up, who's willing to say what your piece is, make your point, talk to each other. And the reason why I say that is because it drives our algorithm. Really helps me. So thank you for doing that. Great job, everybody.
Look, I wasn't put on this planet to spread hate. I think I did that for a while, but I changed my ways, and I'm not here to spread hate. I'm definitely, but I think I put it best the other day when I realized I was being a little bit of a dick in the comments to somebody, and I was like, look, all opinions are welcome, but they're definitely going to be scrutinized very heavily. so just like, if it drives you away, maybe you weren't meant to be here. That's fine.
There's going to be some people that are here that are never meant to be here, and those are some of the people I was talking about before, the ones who already have their minds made up, the emotional ones, the reactionary ones. And I just wanted to say thank you to you, Drew, because I mentioned this the other day on the other show, but it's just like, it's such a unique privilege and an opportunity to make yourself available to the public, to give your opinion, because you were a cop for 29 years. A lot of cops get your position, and they're not all about getting out there in the public and talking about what they've seen, what they've done, and what their experience is. And we appreciate that, we get to have a show where a cop who did 29 years and not 30 years, because in some senses you're a big quitter, but 29 years. We appreciate that you put in 29 years, and then you brought all that experience here for us. We appreciate it. I think it's cool. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for saying that.
All right.
It's cleansing. So, Genta, I apologize if I was a dick to you in the comments, but I'm a dick at times.
Yeah, Genta's cool. I don't know. She was giving me a little shit earlier, too. Catherine Nelson says, okay, I got here late. What did the AI say? We are literally at 2.5 hours.
Well, we can start over again if you want.
Let's just go back to the beginning. Okay. All right, guys. Watch all our videos. Hit like and subscribe, and everybody have a good night. And check out the back catalog. Watch all our old episodes. Great stuff.
This one right here.
Watch this one. I don't know.
It's probably this one.
We're on Spotify too, if you like to listen.
Oh, right.
Apple Music and all that. And you could follow Drew on Instagram at True Crime Drew Guy 69.
Nice.
Nice. 848 Comm 911. Leave us a voicemail. 848-266-6911. Good night,
Comm 911 forever.
Bye, everybody. 1,000 episodes, 1,000 years of Comm Center.